Hello, long time no see. Hope you're all doing well. I haven't had time to upload in a while. It's been quite a busy month. I had a couple of back to back birthdays, so I've been trying to continue my art journey while also juggling life's events. But I still want to hold myself accountable and continue to post. Even if they get no views, I'm okay with that. This channel is more for me to keep consistency and make sure I'm creating, even if whatever I'm creating is not complete. With that being said, let's get into it. Pokemon. Let's talk about it. I love Pokemon. It's one of those franchises that has followed me through childhood and it holds a special place in my heart. Don't get me wrong, it has its flaws, especially this generation, but nothing gets me more hyped when a new generation drops and I get to see what the Pokemon designers create. My favorite design this generation is Mousehold and Tinkaton. Their designs are simple yet cute. They look like they could have easily been a collaboration with Sanrio. Fun fact, they were designed by Megumi Mizutani, who was also the designer for the main characters in Sword and Shield. So she definitely has a good eye for cute and childish designs. My favorite games is a tie between Gen 3, 5, and 6. I grew up playing Ruby and Sapphire, and some of my best memories are strategizing with the other playground kids on type advantages and how to beat the Elite Four. I remember Action Replay being a thing, and some of the older kids using it to help me hatch some legendary eggs. I had no idea what I was doing, but it was a much simpler time, and I remember having so much fun. Gen 5 was able to pull me back into the franchise since I was still an avid Nintendo handheld gamer. Again, I didn't know what I was doing, but I remember specifically the battle subway artwork made me appreciate the direction Pokemon was heading, and it made me hyped for the franchise going 3D. This brings us to Gen 6, which is where I fell in love with the franchise all over again. This is where I learned about EV and IV training, abilities, and competitive play. This gen was far from perfect, but I love seeing some of my favorite Pokemon in 3D and being able to feed them with the Pokemon of Me feature. It reminded me of Nintendogs. Speaking of favorite Pokemon, mine are the Solasis line, which I was able to get a plush from at the Pokemon Center in Tokyo Skytree. I keep it on my desk just for a souvenir. It's really cute. Musharna, Mega Slowbro, Mousehold, Carpink, Tinkaton, and Beautifly. I try to use these whenever I play competitively, even though I know I'm going to lose because they're not best, but I try to make use of their abilities and whatever niche they're able to offer. But the reason why I bring up Pokemon is because I thought it would be fun to design a fake mon of my own. I was able to find some time during my lunch break at work to start on a design, and I thought I would want to share it with you guys. So let's get to it. So I start off with this really rough sketch of a Reuniclus. It's really rough. I just did it based off memory, but I had this idea of a convergent evolution, or a regional form, I should say, of this line. So I don't know if you remember in your bio class, there's the animal cell and the plant cell. I remember the plant cell being very rigid and blocky, and I thought I could have some fun with that by making that into a Pokemon design. So I think of like a Solasis, and by making them in a way like kind of like a Legos where they can combine and make different shapes. But I slowly kind of drift away from this idea, and I started thinking more about convergent evolution and how Game Freak's going to tackle that going forward, because it's a pretty hard idea if you really think about it, like making an animal that are completely different. So I wanted to give an old Pokemon some love, and that Pokemon being Love-Disc. So I was like, okay, how am I going to combine a fish and make it convergent? So I kind of went with the bug route, and I thought of like a love bug. And I thought this could be a cool way of incorporating Love-Disc and Alomomola together. They're both Pokemon that look very similar in design. I don't know why Game Freak didn't link them together, but this is my way of linking them. So I'm trying to figure out which animal to take inspiration from. So I think of these moths. They're really cute. They're fuzzy. I had eyes to this design. I didn't want to make them too realistic. I kind of wanted to make them uncanny. Because if you've ever looked at certain bugs, they have like eyes, but they're not real eyes, they're just fake eyes to scare off bigger animals. So I kind of wanted to make that apparent with this design. So yeah, I add the fur, I'm adding the antenna. I add a heart-shaped stinger at the end. So here I start doing different angles of the love bug Pokemon, but again, this is during my lunchtime, so I didn't really have time to kind of get all the angles and references, so I just start prioritizing the first design. So yeah, I give like a heart outline, and then I have this other idea of these heart-shaped eyes. I don't know if you remember in cartoons, whenever a cartoon character falls in love or they look at something that they think is very attractive, their eyeballs shoot out of their head and they're like heart-shaped. So I thought that could be a cool idea for a bug, since bugs have very unique eyes than us. But it ended up looking really creepy, so I ended up scrapping the idea and just focusing on the initial design. So I wasn't able to go the more cartoony route, so I decided to make it more realistic. I took inspiration from Yanmega, Yanma, and Vibrava. And here is where I had the idea of making their antennas tangle with each other. Because Love Disc in the anime, they kiss. And I'm like, okay, well, how can bugs kiss? Well, instead of kissing, maybe their antennas tangle up. And from a bird's eye view, it looks like two Love Discs kissing. So I really liked the idea. So I kind of finalized everything by giving everything a hard outline. So I began coloring and I tried my best to make it look Pokemon-like. Pokemon has a very subtle way of shading and coloring. If you zoom in on a Pokemon artwork, you could see that there's transparent layers on top of layers. And I kind of wanted to replicate that to my very best. Coloring isn't really my strong suit, but I think it ended up coming out pretty good. So I tried to get texture on the wings, try to get texture on the fur, and yeah, I think it came out pretty good. I did the top-down view of it just to give my idea some life, and that's the final product. I wanted to name this Pokemon Love Bug because it's a love bug, but I couldn't really think of a name on the top of my head. If I did have to give it a type, it'd be obviously a bug and fairy type. But that's my design, and thank you for joining me.